All right, so now we're going to be going into lesson 8.1, which is life is cellular. Now, this is a short lesson, and what we're going to be looking at here are the main points of the cell theory, how do microscopes work, and how do prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells differ. So, again, in this chapter, we're looking at some of the simple. So, let's talk about the discovery of the cell. So, what a cell is the smallest living unit of any organism. So the key here is the living unit, because obviously we can go smaller with an organelle or macromolecules or anything like that, but a cell is the smallest version that is going to show all of the characteristics of life. Now, how the cell was discovered is it was a process. Just like every scientific discovery, it begins to build upon itself. So, Robert Hooke, he was the first that used a microscope to look at a slice of cork. Now, what cork is, it's the outside bark of an oak tree from a plant. So, what he was looking at were dead cells. He was the first one to observe cells, even though these cells were non living. He was looking at dead plant cells and their outside covering, which is called a cell wall. So this is kind of how the term cell got developed, is because a plant cell kind of looks like the cell, the prison cells or of monks in a monastery is what he kind of referred it to. Now the next scientist was Anton von Leeuwenhoek, and this Dutch scientist used a microscope to look at pond water. And in this pond water, what he saw is he saw many tiny living organisms. So he was the first to observe living cells. So again, now we're starting to build this. We saw regular cells, dead ones. Now we saw living cells. So this is kind of what Hooke and Leeuwenhoek looked at. And the picture to the left, that's what it looked like under a microscope. Each one of those little tiny squares is a cell. Now, Leeuwenhoek saw moving things, and this is what he drew, and he called those animalcules as they went through. So, the cell theory was then developed a little bit later by three scientists, Mathis Schleiden, and Schleiden stated that all plants are made of cells. So every plant that he looked at was composed of these microscopic units of cells. Next, we had Theodor Schwann in 1855, and he stated that all animals are made of cells. So again, now we're developing this idea that all living things are made of cells from these two scientists. Now, the last one, Rudolf Virchow, he was a little bit more controversial, and he stated that new cells did not just spontaneously appear, but instead are produced only from the division of existing cells. So, in other words, cells come from other cells. And between these five scientists, it led us to the cell theory. So, the cell theory is composed of two parts. All living things are made up of cells. In other words, if something is alive, they're made of cells. Number two is that cells are the basic unit of structure and function. So, what this is referring to is that cells, they have different shapes. Because they have different shapes, they do different jobs within the body. And finally, new cells are produced from existing cells. In other words, cells come from other cells. So again, those three parts there are the basis for the cell theory. Now, just to kind of review, which scientist was first to use a light microscope to observe cells in cork cells? So again, this was Robert Hooke, and Robert Hooke usually is the one that is given the credit for discovering the cells that we now call them. So now let's kind of see when people are exploring cells, what do they use? So what we start with here is the light microscope. So obviously, the light microscope uses light in order to see an image. Okay, there's usually a light source down at the bottom. It shines up through the specimen. You're able to see it. So as you kind of see here, this light will actually pass or passes through a specimen. And then that goes through a series of lenses that will magnify the image. So again, that image is magnified by lenses. So in a light microscope, you can magnify an image about 1,000 times the size of the image. Again, and this magnification level is limited by the wavelengths of light and how they travel and seeing the distance between 2 points. Now, we can also add stains, we can add dyes, or we can add fluorescent dyes that are used for visibility. Now, the next one allows us to see much smaller things, and it's called an electron microscope. So, what this does so again, electron microscope, those are using electrons, and those are bombarded on the image, and it scans it, and a computer kind of reads that image to see and magnify it at a much higher resolution. So electron microscopes, they have a much clearer picture and allows us to see things that are significantly, let's start that again, significantly smaller. Okay, so again, what they use is they use these beams of electrons that are scanning the image instead of light. And again, the problem with these is we can only look at non-living specimens because what these things have to do is they actually have to put them in a vacuum because the air molecules will disrupt those electrons that they're bombarding it with. So we have two types of electron microscopes. We have a transmission electron microscope, a TEM, and a scanning electron microscope, which is an SEM. Okay. Now, both of them using electrons, but in a transmission electron microscope, the sample must be razor thin. So it has to be a thinly sliced specimen. And what happens because of thinly sliced, those electrons are able to pass through. So they are passing through the sample, which creates the image. Now, the image that we are creating is two-dimensional, but we also get what's known as false color. In other words, the computer can add color to kind of see what that image looks like. Now, in a scanning electron microscope, this one is producing a 3D image. So we're scanning the surface, you can see the shape of all these different things. So when we bombard those electrons scan the surface. And a computer kind of modifies that picture for us. So these are the three types of microscopes we're looking at: light microscope, transmission electron microscope, and a scanning one. So when we look at these three images, here's our light microscope. Again, this is the one that we can use for living specimens. We add dyes, fluorescent dyes, but you can see how the light is passing up through this particular image. Now, these two right here, the scanning electron microscope and the transmission, we are only able to look at our non-living specimens. So here in the transmission, you notice it's a 2D image of that thinly sliced layer. And the one that we're looking at here, the type of microscope that produces a 3D image of the surface of the cell, is your scanning electron microscope. You can actually see all three of these are a picture of a yeast molecule. The first one, you can see all those at a much lower magnification. In the second one, the TEM, you can see all the organelles that are in it. And then the SEM, you can see the three-dimensional structure that we have. Now, this leads us on to the types of cells that we have in our body. Okay, prokaryotic and eukaryotic. Now, all cells that we have, every single one of them is surrounded by this thin, flexible barrier called a cell membrane. So the cell membrane is the outside covering, which is made of a lipid layer, okay? And that lipid layer are called phospholipids. Again, that protects the outside and allows things to enter or leave the cell. Now, a cell will fall into two categories depending on whether they contain a nucleus or not. So eukaryotic cells, they have a nucleus. And remember, the nucleus is the structure that is storing the DNA within our cell. Prokaryotic cells do not have a nucleus. So in other words, the DNA is just free floating on the inside of that cell. Again, they're usually smaller and simpler in nature, which we'll talk about on a later slide. So if we kind of categorize some of these things, and we start with the prokaryotic cell. So every cell has a cell membrane. So prokaryotic cells, those are found there. Now, prokaryotic cells, again, do not have a nucleus. Their DNA is free floating. And prokaryotic cell size is much smaller. And they're also very simpler in nature. Okay, they are very simple. They're not very complex. There's not much going on. Now, in this example that we have, or an example of a prokaryotic cell, is a bacteria cell. So if we draw a bacteria cell for our prokaryotic, so here is our prokaryotic cell. What you'll notice is they're very simple. They usually take the shape of like a pill or a bean, and on the inside they have this circular DNA that's connected. They also have ribosomes, which make proteins for this, and they also usually have a tail called a flagella. So you'll notice this is very simple, not very complex. Now, our eukaryotic cell, they for sure have a nucleus. That is where our DNA is stored and is the defining characteristic of this structure. Now, their cell size that we have for a eukaryotic cell is much larger, right? It's almost, I don't know, 20 times, 5 to 20 times bigger. Now, their complexity is they are much more complex. We have all of these different organelles on the inside of the cell. So, an example of a eukaryotic cell or a plant, an animal, or a fungi. All of these are eukaryotic cells. So, if we draw a eukaryotic cell, right? It is much larger. You can see our cell membrane there, but the distinguishing characteristic is this nucleus that stores our linear DNA. Okay. Around that, you have other structures like our endoplasmic reticulum or our Golgi bodies, which help transport things out of the cell. We also have mitochondria that's used to support energy. We have ribosomes that make proteins. We have lysosomes that help break down dead parts, and many more things within this structure. Again, much more large, much more complex. So the human eye can see objects that are larger than 0.5 millimeters, and most of what interest cell biologists is much smaller than that. So microscopes make seeing cellular and subcellular world possible, but notice here's our prokaryotic cell. This is much smaller than our larger and more complex eukaryotic cell. So to put it into perspective, this right here is the same as that organelle right there. So an organelle of a eukaryotic cell is about the same size as a prokaryotic cell. So if we compare these three things, so in general, eukaryotic cells are larger and more complex. So the eukaryotic cells, they have this purple structure right here that defines them, and that is our nucleus. Now, you'll also notice that the animal cell, the outside layer is what's called the cell membrane. Okay, now in plants, the outside layer is the cell wall, but the cell membrane is on the inside of that layer. So both of them have a cell membrane, and both of them have organelles. Another distinguishing characteristic here is we have our chloroplast, which is only found in plant cells, and we have our large vacuole, which is another thing that is only found in plant cells. In animal cells, again, we have just mitochondria in that cell. Now, in our prokaryotic cell, you'll notice we have no nucleus, but we just have DNA floating in this cytoplasm. Okay, we also have a movement mechanism called the flagella. But again, our prokaryotic cell as well has a cell membrane protecting the outside layer. So the cells of all organisms contain DNA, whether it's prokaryotic or eukaryotic. So in cells of which groups is the cellular DNA enclosed in a nucleus? So that is going to be a eukaryotic cell. So a eukaryotic cell, again, a nucleus is found within that structure. Now, this cell right here, this cell is a prokaryotic cell. Okay, notice no nucleus, DNA free floating. So this is the reason, because it does not contain a nucleus. So again, no nucleus means that it is a prokaryotic cell.